I hope you guys like the sound of my voice because I'm going to be doing a lot of talking in this one. So buckle up. Today I'm going to talk about a game that's near and dear to my heart, one that I cut my teeth in competitive play on, and that is Star Wars CCG. Now, for those that don't know, CCG stands for Collectible Card Game. This is not to be confused with Star Wars, the card game put out by Wizards of the Coast, or Star Wars, the living card game by Fantasy Flight Games. You also can't confuse it for Young Jedi, CCG, or Jedi Knights, CCG. Star Wars CCG was the second or third... No, it was the third. It was the third card game I had ever played. The first being Magic the Gathering in high school, and the second being Star Trek CCG. Star Trek I'll talk about in another video down the road, but Star Wars always held a special place in my heart. And you know, the movies really obviously struck a chord with me. If you see my channel or you know me personally, you know that Star Wars means a lot to me, more than it probably should. That's healthy. But we're going to take a look through my decks, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the game. We're going through the light side deck right now, and the premise of the game is very simple. You have these locations, you have characters, you have starships, you have weapons, and you have events and interrupts and all sorts of other card types that are influenced by what we saw on the screen. The game came out with the premiere set, which focused on A New Hope, at least the first half of A New Hope, the majority of it. The first major expansion was A New Hope, which rounded out that movie and plugged up some gaps. Then we had Hoth, then Dagobah, then Cloud City, Jabba's Palace, Special Edition. What was it? Endor was next. Then Death Star 2. I believe the Reflection set was in there somewhere. There were a bunch of sets. But basically every movie got 3 sets out of it, including not including Special Edition, which had stuff that was involved with all different movies up to that point, before the prequels and media. But you know, finding these 2 decks of cards really brought back a lot of great memories of meeting lifelong friends and having so much fun. I stopped playing this game right around when it died, and how it died is pretty sad. If we crawl into the Wayback Machine and go back to Decipher's initial announcement from CEO Warren Holland, he kind of gives a breakdown from his point of view of what happened. And the short story of it is that Lucasfilm saw dollar signs with Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast and decided to ship that license over to Hasbro so they could print money. See, episode 2 was right around the corner, and the time for change was pretty much ready. Star Wars CCG at that point had become a veritable brute of a card game to collect. It was great if you were in it from the beginning, but getting in to play, like if you got in around Death Star 2 or Tatooine or Theed Palace or something like that, the later sets, you were completely lost. Sure, you could catch up because some of the singles weren't that expensive, but there was a lot you had to catch. I mean, you had to catch up. So it'd be like trying to start playing Magic today, but everything from the past 30 years has been like legal. And so there's no way you could ever get the Moxes or the Power 9s. And it was like that with Star Wars. They never rotated sets out. That was always a selling point for the game, that your collection is always worth something. You can always play with the cards that you own. But I think that ended up coming to bite Decipher's game in the ass. Because you weren't rotating cards out, and you were printing cards that were either overpowered or mechanics that were barely tested just to push a product out the door to meet a time frame, I think that's what really ultimately killed it. Player interest shrunk because for newbies it was harder to get into, and for veterans it was just a matter of keeping up with the Skywalkers. But, and as your player base shrinks and interest is kind of waning on it, even in the wake of a brand new Star Wars movie, because Star Wars Episode 1, at the time that this game died, was only like a year and a half old, 2 years old. But Episode 1 did a number on collecting, Star Wars collecting as a whole. Interest in Star Wars just dropped. So I think it's just a combination of the brand taking a perceived hit in interest. Your smaller player base is shrinking and not growing, so you're not selling. And what do you think is going to happen? But if you've never played Star Wars CCG, let me give you a brief, high-level overview of how the game is played. The game is broken down between the light side and the dark side. I know that's shocking now. With all these Star Wars games out, it's always Rebels versus Imperials, Separatists versus the Republic. But back then, this was like the first one that really, the first game that really separated the two. With the exception of West End Games miniatures battles. I think that might predate this a little bit. But anyway, your deck consists of 60 cards. And that is your living force. That is your resource on how to deploy creatures, characters, weapons, effects, to pay costs for interrupts. So in order to generate force, in order to play these cards that are in your hand, you have to play locations. And you start the game off with either playing an objective, which plays multiple sites or locations, or you can play a single location. And when the game started off, that was how you played, is you choose the starting location. Normally, if you were light side, it was like Obi-Wan's hut, and if you were dark side, it was either the Death Star or Jabba's palace. And that's typically how it went. You play locations as you go, you play characters. Your deck, whenever you suffer loss in a battle, or what's called a force drain, you lose cards off the top of your deck or from your hand to your loss pile. And as the game goes on, it becomes this war of attrition. And that's funny because there's a mechanic called attrition in this game. But it's basically who can outlast the opponent, right? You want to mill your opponent. You want to make sure his force gets snuffed out. And it was a very, very fun and strategic game. Highly competitive, and it did bring out the worst in me at times. I have never been as competitive in any other game as I was in Star Wars, even though I didn't get to play in that many tournaments. I think that's probably why. It just was like bottled up. I couldn't get a release. But the mechanics are great, and if anyone's interested in a how to play Star Wars CCG video, let me know. I know there's plenty out here on YouTube, and there's lots of great resources if you would like to play it, including for free digitally. Print is going to be a little expensive, but digitally I think is probably the way to go. And I could throw some links in the description below, giving you an idea of how to do that. And I'll also throw out links to the Star Wars CCG Players Committee, which has all sorts of resources if you're kind of interested in this game, or if you're a returning veteran after watching this video. But as noted in the opening crawl of this video, it does make me a little sad. And what makes me sad is that the game went out the way it did. It makes me wonder now that if there was a resurgence, or if the game would have kept on going, would it have survived to the golden age of Star Wars content we currently have? I can only, whenever I watch Mandalorian or Bad Batch or Clone Wars, Solo, Rogue One, and yes, even the sequels, all I can think about is what if? What if we got, stuff from episode 2 and 3 in the game? What if we were able to have First Order decks versus Republic decks? Or a Rebel deck versus a First Order deck, or stuff like that. Would it be fun? Would the Mandalorian both be dark side and light side? Would he have representation on both sides of the Force? What would Grogu do? Those things make me just really wonder. And the mechanics of this game are so ripe for something like that. And if they would have done, and hindsight's 2020, if they would have done set rotation, they might have sold more sets and the game might have still gone on. Chances are Lucasfilm was still going to bounce once the contract was up and go with Hasbro. Hasbro had the toys. Hasbro had the RPG at the time because they had just stolen the license away from West End Games. So it does make sense from a business standpoint to consolidate. And I can't fault Hasbro and I can't fault Lucasfilm for doing it. I used to really, really despise Wizards for a long time for what they did. But in reality, if the game that I loved would have been healthy and would have been printing money, there's a chance maybe it would have survived. But in reality, I was already checked out. Once I got my Jedi Luke cards and my Emperor Palpatine cards, I played Death Star 2 in that environment, and then it was pretty much it. I just started packing up all my cards, stopped playing competitively, started going more into Star Trek CCG, which was, at the time, equally off the rails as Star Wars CCG, but it was a little bit more fun. And then you also had Lord of the Rings CCG came out at that same time. So there was a lot of competition, not only from other companies, but Decipher themselves. And I was a Decipher guy. So I'm going to pack up my cards, put them back on the shelf, and maybe one day, when I have a youngling of my own, they can follow this damned old fool on another cardboard crusade. Thanks for joining me on this. This was a lot of fun to do. I really appreciate you guys sticking with me. And I know this is not Battletech related content, although the Michael Stackpole connection's there, right, guys? Well, appreciate it. Stay awesome. And I'll talk to you guys later.